Hey folks, in this video we're going to be learning about lists, dictionaries, and dictionaries with lists, which is also known as associating values with key pairs. This video is meant to be a breakout fundamentals tutorial that will help you start learning Python's Pandas data analytics library. So we're going to be moving a little bit faster today. If you're looking for a broader introduction to Pandas, I have a fundamentals video for beginners, which you can find on my channel page. So this video presumes that you already have an IDE that you want to write Python code in. So if you don't have one set up yet, pause the video and download the environment so that you can follow along with the tutorial. This video is going to be leveraging Google's Collaboratory Notebook. All of this will work in any other editor, whether it's PyCharm, VS Code, Jupyter Notebook, or whatever. So I'm going to begin by going up into the new section and then opening up a new Collaboratory workbook. I am going to change the name of my notebook to Lists and Dictionaries, and then I'm going to manually engage my runtime. I'm going to add a text block so that I have a header section, and I'm going to call it lists, and then I'm going to move it to the top of my notebook, and then I'm going to begin with a hash symbol, and I will be discussing one-dimensional arrays, which are also known as lists. So I'm going to declare a variable of list_1, and I'm going to set it equal to square brackets, and then I'm going to use a string. I'm going to have an integer, a float, and a date. I'm going to have a print statement where I will pass that list1 variable. I'm going to run my cell, and now you can see that the output is exactly what we entered into our list1 variable. So in order to build a list, you need to have a pair of square brackets. So you can see we have an opening and closing square bracket, and then we have values that are comma separated. It doesn't matter what values you pass into your list as long as they're comma separated. We are going to discuss data types in the next video about data frames and data types. So understanding what you're passing into lists and how lists work are helpful when collecting your data so that you can start using it in a data frame. The reason that a list is called a one-dimensional array is because there is only one dimension that you need to access. So in this case, the values inside of your square brackets are your only dimension. Therefore, if you want to reference a value in your list, you can do so by leveraging a number. Lists are zero indexed. That means that the first value in your list can be referenced with the number 0. Everything increments from there. So the first value is 0, the second value is 1, the third value is 2, and the fourth value is 3. So in our example here, we have list 1. If I wanted to extract the first value, which in this case is the string that says mark, all I would have to do is pass a square bracket and the number 0. Then when I run my code again, you'll see that the output is returning mark. If I wanted to get the last value in my list, in this case the date, I would pass the number 3 because it is the fourth value in my 0 indexed list. Now, another type of list that you can have is a two-dimensional array. That's also known as a list of lists. So we're going to build out a two-dimensional array here, and we're going to follow the same naming convention that we just had. So we're going to have list_2, and we're going to set that equal to square brackets, and then we're going to hit enter, and then we're going to pass in a list. So I'm going to use string, number, float, and date. I'm going to go to the right of my list. I'm going to add a comma. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to pass another list. So I'm going to use another string, I'm going to use another number, another float, and another date. I'm going to add one more list to my list of lists, which is going to follow the same convention of string, number, float, and date. So you can see when we print list 2, we are now getting, and you know what, I'm going to rerun that so that we don't have list 1 running. Now you can see we have a pair of square brackets on the outside, and then we have 3 lists that are also comma separated values inside of our larger list here. We now have 2 dimensions with which to access values. So in our first example, we only had one list. It was one dimension. That means we don't have to denote what list we want to reference. But because in our 2-dimensional array, we have several lists as part of a larger comma-separated list, the first thing that we need to reference is the list that we want. So if we want to return our first list, which has the value of Matt, 13, so on and so forth, we would follow the same logic that we did with our 1-dimensional list, which is passing in a 0. That's because lists are always 0 index, regardless of the use, right? So if it's 1 dimension, if it's 2 dimension, the list will always have a 0 index. So when you're working with a 2-dimensional array like this, aka a list of lists, the first dimension that you're accessing is the list. So you're choosing the list that you want to work with, right? So if you wanted the second list, you would pass in a 1, and now we're starting to get the list that begins with Christy. The next thing that we can access is the values within the list that we want to access. So right now we've said we want to access the second list, which is at index point 1. And then if we wanted to access the third value, 12.3, from our second list, we would add another set of square brackets, and then we would enter in the number 2. Because in a 0 indexed list, the first value is 0, the second value is 1, and the third value is 2. So when we run our cell, you can see we're returning 12.3. There's lots of stuff that you can do with lists that we're not going to touch on today, which includes, appending values and pushing values and slicing values, all that type of stuff. So learning to work with lists is a valuable skill. And if I hear from you in the comments and email that you would like to learn more about working with lists, then I'd be happy to create a follow-up video. The next thing that we're going to touch on in this video is going to be dictionaries. Dictionaries are very useful with pandas. You can replace values with dictionaries. You can build data frames with dictionaries. You can create indexes so that you can look things up in dictionaries. Really good thing to know how to use. So we're just going to talk about how dictionaries are structured. So we are going to have first example, and we're going to set it equal to curly brackets. We're going to hit enter. So basically, dictionaries just associate a value with a key. So this first example is going to have a type, in this case, a family relation, and then we're going to set it to a name. So in this case, we're associating the key of dad with Joe. We're going to associate mom with Joan, and we're going to associate brother with Bill. So we can print our first example, and you'll see that we return our key value pairs. So if we just wanted to return Joe, we could follow a similar example that we did with our lists, but instead of denoting the index point, we can just call dad, and then you can see we can get Joe. Same thing with mom and brother. So it's really helpful if you want to start leveraging, you know, names in order to replace values. You can just use a dictionary. And Pandas replace method allows you to do this. So this first example variable that we just declared with our curly brackets, we could just pass our print statement and replace all values for brother with Phil if we were working within a data frame. Now, in addition to having single values, you can also create dictionaries with lists, which also allows you to associate keys and values. So in the above, we would have to have a single instance of brother in a data frame, and then it would always turn into Phil. But there might be times where you want to more programmatically find and replace things. Or you want to build a Pandas data frame with a dictionary so that you have column headers that then have associated values with them. So we're going to build out one such example, and we're going to call it combo. And we're going to have these curly brackets here, and we're going to have a key of person, and we're going to associate it with all the names that we just wrote. So we're going to have Joe, Joan, Phil. We're going to go to the right, we're going to comma separate it, and then we're going to have family type. We're going to have a colon, square bracket, and we're going to say dad, mom, and Phil. Then we're going to print our combo variable, and now you can see we are returning the input of the combo variable. Now, we can also call each key, right? So when we say person, you can see we're returning Joe, Joan, and Phil. And then because this is a list, we can start referencing the individual index points. So if we want to return Joan, we could type in combo, square bracket, person, and then reference the index point of 1. My apologies, I had a 2 in there, but this is 0 index. So when we print this, you can see we're now returning Joan. So what this allows us to do is that if we had a data frame, or if we wanted to build a data frame, we could just pass in our combo variable, and then we would start to get rows and columns where one of our columns would be called person, and our row would then, our first row would be Joe, our second row would be Joan, and our third row would be Phil. We would have another column to the right of person that would have the name family type, and then our first row would be dad, second mom, third Phil. Or, oh, I apologize, I should have that Phil as brother. So in our next video, we're going to be building on this example and start to build out data frames. I hope you found this helpful and that this acted as an access point to start working with Python's Pandas library. Please reach out in the comments section if you have any feedback, comments, suggestions. My email is available in my About section. I hope you'll check out the next video.